Today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, we're going to really recap some things, some developments this week. Because first, I do want to hit upon the big interview on the national side of things, the Kamala Harris, super important, super uber duper important interview from yesterday. I want to talk about that. Also, I want to follow up yesterday. I talked about the drag show at BCTC. I posted about it on my social medias. And of course, the leftist, transgender drag shows are not sexual. We super duper promise. Stop not letting us gaslight you. We promise that they're not sexual, crowd. The flag went up. They said, oh, we need to go attack this guy and tell him to shut up. We'll go over to exactly what they had to say. Their arguments well, not exactly what they had to say, but we'll go into what their arguments are and how it's incredibly dumb, how their tactics are meant to shut up that silent majority, because of course the majority of people know what they're doing is absolutely gross, disgusting, and awful. In fact, they even know it. They just need to gaslight themselves. And finally, we'll follow up with a little update on the Daniel Grossberg story. Representative Grossberg out of Louisville has been on a never-ending saga that is sure to end with him having to resign, but it also says something about the fact that out of the 20 House reps and the Democrats have in the House, 3 of them are in a position where they may have to end up losing their seats or step down. We'll go over that all today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, but please make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to the show. Make sure you're leaving a review too as well, because remember, when I go out there and I'm talking about these things, and we'll go into some of the, once again, the comments that were said regarding some of the BCTC things, and as I draw attention to these issues that the public, the majority of people in Kentucky care about, well, what the left tries to do is to silence you, try to coordinate and get you to shut up because they don't want that information out there. And so the most important thing you can do by leaving a review is not only helps with the algorithm, but it also counteracts the leftists that go onto the podcast and leave negative reviews simply because, well, they don't like my viewpoint. Not because of the quality of the show, not because of the audio quality, the content quality itself. They just don't like the show in general because it doesn't espouse beliefs they agree with. My commentary is not something that falls in line with their worldview. So that's why, if you can, take a moment, leave a review to help fight against those that would like to leave negative reviews in hopes that you go ahead and, well, don't listen to my show ever because they don't want people getting this information. But without further ado, let's dig down into it. So, Kamala Harris's big interview. It's a big moment for her, right? It's her first interview of the campaign. Now, let me set this up. You got to look at the handicap game here, okay? So, even with everything going on, so if we were to grade her performance on an even keel, at an even playing field, as we did with every single other politician that gives interviews, we would say she did awful. Like if you're comparing this to a golf game, right? It'd be like everybody else has like a 5 or less handicap, and she has like a 20 or a 30 handicap, okay? Like a crazy high handicap. And she's got this high handicap out there in order to make her competitive with everybody else, right? It's like imagine a golf league where everybody else is hitting from what's called the tips, the tournament tees, and she's hitting from already halfway down the fairway. And then compare the performances. And even with all those things of her hitting halfway down the fairway, and I'll explain in a second, she still didn't do as well as the people who hit from the tips. Now adjust from the fact that she had all these helps to help her. She's allowed to start the hole. Going back to the golf analogy, because it's the best way I can explain how they try to even the playing field in golf. Imagine, going back to the golf analogy, now imagine you made her play from where everybody else did, and her play and her competitiveness would be absolutely horrendous. So even with the handicaps in play, it was bad. And I'll go over to why exactly it was bad. But even with those adjustments, if you're to compare her to who she's going up against, and if it was a fair playing field, she would have looked twice as, 3, 4, 5 times as awful. Because this is everything she had going for her, okay? First, it was pre-recorded and edited. Sources at CNN are saying that the actual interview length of time that was recorded was over 41 minutes. But the actual amount of the interview you got to see was 18 minutes. Over half of the interview was left on the cutting room floor. I'm told that there's a few specific moments where Dana Bash asked follow-up questions. For an example, at one point, Kamala Harris was asked if she changed her views on fracking. And she said, no, I've always supported fracking. I super support fracking, or whatever. Something along those lines of I support fracking. Because, of course, Pennsylvania fracking's a big part of the business there. It's a big employer. And so she claimed, no, I support fracking. But then, apparently, and this made it onto the cutting room floor, this is what the sources are saying, that Dana Bash followed that up and said, well, how can you support fracking and the Green New Deal that wants to ban fracking at the same time? And Kamala Harris apparently had no response to that. And the Harris campaign asked CNN to cut that part out, and apparently they did. So keep that in mind. It wasn't live, and over half of it was edited, left on the cutting room floor. And apparently what they left out was so bad, CNN won't even reportedly release the transcript of the full interview. Not just not release the video, but they won't release the transcript. That's how bad apparently it was. So you have that going for you. You have the second thing going for you, which is that you had Tim Walz there. And so, one of the things the campaign's having a problem with is the fact that they don't know what their viewpoints are and everything. Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, they don't know what their policy is yet because they don't have any. And so they haven't sat down to hash out what our talking points are, what our policy is. And so the concern is that Tim Walz will be out there doing an interview on his own, be asked a question, and then he doesn't know where the Harris and where her administration, if she were to win presidency, would actually be on that issue. And so they don't want him to say something that then they have to go back and fix, or that doesn't actually align with what the campaign or what the administration would actually end up doing, or the messaging they want out there. But they had to bring Tim Walz around to make sure they're on the same page. Now you throw in, so we already have Tim Walz there. We already have the fact that it was edited. We already have the fact that, and this goes into two things now. So if you watch the interview, at the beginning, not as much, but towards the end, the last half, when she's asked questions, she's literally staring down a lot. In fact, those of you who listen to my show, head on over to my social media. Head over to my Facebook or my Twitter. My Twitter's at KY Cooperrider. On Facebook, just search Andrew Cooperrider. And you'll see my last post, if you're listening to this when it gets published on Friday. My last post is of a video of where she was answering a question about illegal immigration and amnesty. And look at how often she's looking down. She isn't just like glancing down as she goes. There are points where for a full, 5 to 10 seconds, she's staring down at the ground and talking as she's doing it in a very repeated phase. And it definitely looks like, to me, that she's reading notes that are down in her lap. Now, if she's got notes down in her lap, that would mean a few things. One, they probably got the questions ahead of time. And then two, obviously, CNN allowed her to have a cheat sheet below. And when I say, you cannot watch that video and not think to yourself, what is down there that she is just staring at in her lap? What is down below? What's on the table maybe? Because they started running this chyron at the bottom through the last half, and you couldn't even see it was on the bottom of the table. So that leaves some questions to be asked. So when I talk about handicaps here, we have a situation where we know for a fact over half of it was edited, not live. You have Tim Walz there with you, which is really weird. Now, people want to point to the fact that other presidential candidates have done joint interviews with their VPs. That's fine. But your first interview as the presidential nominee for the Democrat Party should not be one where you're with Tim Walz. It should be one on your own, because we want to know about your policies, not Tim Walz's policies. And, there's a few awful parts, too, as well that came with Tim Walz. We'll get into some parts there for you guys. But the point that I'm getting to is so you got Tim Walz, not live, edited. Now you have most likely questions ahead of times and notes. And with all that in mind, she still did a pretty bad interview performance. It wasn't super bad. It wasn't career-ending like, the debate performance of Joe Biden. I'm not going to lie to you. I see a lot of right-wing pundits out there saying this is the day that Kamala Harris's campaign died. It's probably not the day it necessarily died. She could still recover, I think, if she goes out there and does a good debate performance. But if her debate performance is on par with her interview performance, now throw in the fact that you have Trump able to go after her, I think it actually, this you may look back and say this is the first domino that fell, that started people to realize she has no idea what she's talking about, and has no policy, and is flip-flopped, and has no consistency in her answers. And that's part of the reason why she struggles so much. People wonder, why does she struggle so much to conversate? She's like a politician, this should be easy. The problem is, over time, since she's left having to get elected in California, she has to say things that she doesn't agree with. And see, when you're speaking the truth, and you're being honest about what you believe in, and you're saying things that you actually believe in, you don't have to struggle to find the words, because it just comes naturally. This is something you're passionate about. This is something you can speak about. You're a politician. You should be very passionate and able to largely speak on issues without much information as far as it goes. Like when you guys listen to my show, I do a show just about every day, and it's about 30, 40 minutes long, and I talk about politics, and my notes are like 5 bullet lines normally. It's not exact written out things, and most of my notes and bullet points that I use and I reference when I'm making the show is simple things like, oh, here's the exact amount that works. It basically the math on things. If I'm talking about data points and things, the math and the calculations I will have done ahead of time, because, it's hard to do calculations on the fly in front of people. And that's kind of the most. But otherwise, you research it, you learn it, and then you go and talk about it because you're passionate about it. So you'd think somebody who's a vice president and who's been in politics for as long as she has is passionate about politics. And so you would say that if you're passionate about it, it should be things you know about. You should be very able to speak about these things. But the problem is Kamala Harris right now is trying to put forward viewpoints she isn't passionate about, she doesn't believe in, and so talking about them does not come naturally. And so she has a speaking cadence where she's using time buyers, right? And so rather than just pausing, Elon Musk does this if you ever pay attention when he's giving an interview. If he is thinking about what he wants to say next, he will literally just pause and think about it. The problem here is Kamala Harris doesn't have anything else to say about it. And so she's trying to search and search and search. And she doesn't think if she pauses to think about what she's going to say, she's going to come up with something. So she ends up with these word salad sentences where she says things that make zero sense. And here's one outtake. Take a listen to this.
Look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy.
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and by extension.
Now, last I checked, all deadlines are time sensitive. That's what the word means. What she said there was nonsensical. And it was clearly a moment where she didn't have it scripted and she was searching for what to say. It's clear. And so she had a few moments like that, and most of the time she was asked the question. She didn't have an answer, but Tim Walz also had a few moments that are really worth looking at. Dan and Bash asked him about him lying about being in a war zone. And it was an interesting back and forth that I think is definitely worth listening to. Let's hear it here.
The country is just starting to get to know you. I want to ask you a question about how you've described your service in the National Guard. You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is. And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the idea that you said that you were in war,
Yeah.
Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar's not always correct. But
So you lied. Well, my grammar was, just incorrect. No, you lied. Well, my grammar. So did you lie about going to war? I just get passionate. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. Okay, but did you lie about going to war? Well, maybe my grammar wasn't accurate. I didn't lie, but my grammar wasn't accurate. No, your grammar was accurate. It was what you were saying that wasn't accurate. He clearly lied about going to war in order to try to make a demagoguing point to take away your Second Amendment right, which you think would be disqualifying, and he doesn't really have a good answer for it, clearly. And I gotta say, the overall demeanor of the interview, Tim Walz, looked not very joyful. Neither did Kamala Harris. Now, I do want to take a moment to talk about how she came off in the interview. And I've said this to a few people as we've talked about the debates. Because I think you're going to see this, Kamala Harris has a problem. And right now, she's pulling a lot from women. And just factual, a lot of women, even moderate women especially, find Trump off-putting. And whether you like it or not, whether you agree with their statements or not, it doesn't matter. They find Trump off-putting because he isn't super emotionally sensitive. And women care a lot. This is just facts. You can yell at me all you want to. But women care a lot about how you do things more than what the actual outcome is. And men typically, their way of communicating with one another, they're more concerned about the results than they are about the way we get there. And so comments that Trump has made that they could seem demeaning or angry or mean, it can turn off men too as well, but just it's more likely to turn off women. And that's why Trump has always struggled a little bit, not a little bit, but he's always struggled with women voters, period. Now, the reason why Trump won in 2016 is because women looked at Kamala Harris and they didn't see somebody who they wanted to be around. Because here's the other thing, just factual. Women will judge other women a little bit differently, just like men judge other men a little bit differently. Because men spend more time in a friend situations interacting with men than they do women. And women spend more time in friendly situations interacting with women than they do men. Just the facts. And so when they are talking to individuals or they're seeing a politician talk, it's trying to remind them of people that they know. For an example, Trump, when I see him and what he's doing and how he's talking, he reminds me of certain types of men I have to deal with in business. That's who he reminds me of. And so I'm able to see that, and the types of people I've dealt with in business that act like him generally have been very successful. And so it's kind of like, yeah, I see what you're saying, but at the same time, I know a lot of men who act that way, and they tend to be very successful men. So I can see, I can see why, basically. For women, on the other hand, when they're looking at a woman and how they're talking, they're comparing it to women that they've interacted with. and they have a lot more to choose from. And so Hillary Clinton came off to a lot of women like a bad person. She came off like somebody who was catty and mean, and she came off like the kind of woman that they don't want to hang out with on a Saturday night, that the kind of woman that spreads chaos and discord within friend groups, the kind that's two-faced. That's how she came off to men too, but also that's how women were able to judge the situation. And like I say, you can hate me all you want to from going into it, but the fact of the matter is there's two genders with two different mindsets, with two different natural dispositions when it comes to emotional and mental behaviors. It's just factual. It's why women are drawn to teaching more than men are. It's why women are drawn to like nursing more than men are. It's why women are drawn to the more nurturing professions more than men are. Men are more drawn to the physical labor. I'm not saying no women work in physical labor. I'm not saying no men are teachers or drawn to nursing or whatever. I'm just saying, factually speaking, when we look at a bell curve of men and women, we see certain behaviors are more common in women and certain behaviors more common in men. And so I bring this up because whenever I'm curious how a female politician comes off, I'll watch how the women I know in my life react to. People like, my wife, my mom, if I do have a few female friends, and I'll see how they handle it. And what I've heard from them on Kamala Harris, and what I've heard people say amongst those individuals when they're watching Kamala Harris speak, when I'm watching, we're watching interviews with them around different women, and they find her, when she talks for a length of time, off-putting. They find her very annoying. That's the women I've been around find her very annoying. And there's a reason why, because she comes off like Hillary Clinton did, a lying, two-faced, crazy person. Or at least a lying, two-faced individual. That's how she comes off. And so the concern Kamala Harris's campaign has to have, when you're out there doing, and this is just, I'm sure they focus group test this, because understand, as I'm talking about these concerns they probably have, these are campaigns that literally will bring in, that she's brought in hundreds of millions of dollars over the last several months. So they are focus group testing Kamala Harris. They're focus group testing what she says. They're focus group testing what people have to say about her. And I am positive, especially since they're so heavily hitting on the campaign of joy. And so you can call me all the names you want to for bringing this up and saying being unfair to women or whatever, and I don't care, because I know it's true, and the Kamala Harris campaign knows the facts of the situation. You don't have to agree, you don't have to like the facts, but the facts of the situation is Kamala Harris has, for a fact, been focus group tested, and the focus groups have come away with, we don't like her, we find her off-putting. And so their point of not having her do interviews and not in an adversarial position is because they just want a happy, smiley, joy Kamala Harris reading off a teleprompter at a rally. They don't want her at an interview where she comes off cold, heartless, and two-faced. But that's how she came off in that interview a little bit, if not a lot of bit. And when it comes debate time, the concern is she's going to think, because keep in mind too, her staff is very much online. And so back when she was debating Mike Pence, she did the, I'm speaking moment. She did, I'm speaking, telling Mike Pence, who wasn't really interrupting her, to stop interrupting her. She's speaking. And the online community, especially before Twitter was not censoring free speech, the online community, the algorithm there especially, fed her very online campaign staff posts about people saying, oh, slay queen, go get 'em queen, Oh yeah, put him in his place, Kamala Harris. I love it, blah, blah, blah. And so they believe that that's actually a good move for her. But the problem is you're getting your feedback loop from people who, no matter what Kamala Harris did, would say that was fantastic. And as evidence of this, I've played the Tim Walz outtake, I played the Kamala Harris outtake. You're welcome to go on my Facebook, see another outtake. Everything I've noticed in the interview, factually speaking, I'm not going to sit here and say she did so bad that's career ending, but factually speaking, she did not crush it. If anything, her best hope coming out of that interview is it didn't change anything. That's her best hope. There's no way anybody who was on the fence is now won over by her. That didn't happen. And so when you see left-wing pundits now talking about it, they're acting like she crushed it. It was the best interview ever. Nobody's interviewed more than Kamala Harris interviewed. They'll go on to say, Trump could never do that, even though Trump gives, I think, 4 or 5 interviews a day almost at this point, it seems like. I mean, he'll sit there for hours talking to people like Elon Musk, Theo Vaughn, and podcasts. And then he'll just call in unprompted to morning shows and Fox News shows and various shows and talk to them unprompted, unscripted, in the moment. He'll take questions. He's done press conferences. And he is very unscripted. He'll go into very adversarial positions. So let's not pretend for 5 seconds that Kamala Harris crushed it. She's unlike anybody else. But that's what they want to believe. And so they're now in a feedback loop. And it's going to be a real problem for them, I think. And they're going to go into their focus groups with independent average people, and they're going to get results that they don't understand because they just can't remove themselves from the idea that their feedback loop is wrong. That's why I specifically, what's funny is my Twitter especially is very left-wing. I see nothing but left-wing things because I will read left-wing posts. My Twitter knows that I read left-wing. I really don't read a whole lot of right-wing posts because I already kind of know what they're saying. I already agree with them. I'm curious what the people I disagree with are saying and what world they're living in. And I'm telling you, my left-wing Twitter, they think she crushed it. And I simply don't see it. There's no world where I think that's crushed. In fact, Nate Silver, he just updated his model. He shows Trump now has a better chance of winning from Real Clear Politics because the bump she's supposed to be getting out of the DNC convention, that didn't really materialize. And because that bump didn't happen, you would think her high watermark would be right after the convention, but it went so bad that she didn't really get a bump. So her high watermark, maybe she's already hit. How does she get much better? It's all downhill from here. And if she's not convincingly winning, which she's not now, it's only going to get worse because everybody knows, in the Kamala Harris campaign especially, the more people see of her, the worse she's going to be. So I know I took a lot of time to talk about a national political issue, but I don't do it often, and I felt like talking about it, so it's worth doing. Here's another topic for you. So yesterday, I talked about BCTC having a drag show there on campus, a campus where high school students go, a performance where there was young kids in attendance of that performance, and I posted about it online. And apparently, the drag performer, who I had no idea lived in Kentucky, I had no idea who it was, shared my post onto Facebook and told the fans, the followers, to go stand up, go attack, whatever, my post on Facebook. What's funny is not really, that didn't really happen on Twitter, but it happened on Facebook. So I don't read a lot of their comments because I get it. You hate me, whatever. But there was a common theme that I think is worth talking about. And it points to what their problem is and why do they mob on to posts like that so much. And it's for a simple reason. They literally can't accept the fact that the majority of people disagree with them. And that's not, hyperbole. That's not an overstatement. Literally, polling data show time and time again that people do not agree with, one, the transing of the kids, 2, the sexualizing of kids. 3, men's bathrooms, women's sports being taken over by men. They don't agree with most of the trans agenda specifically, and an outcropping of that trans agenda is the accepting of drag shows. There's a reason why it's tied together. If you say you don't like kids around drag as a sexual performance, they tie that into you being a bigot who hates gay people and trans people and everything else because it's not art. They assume you hate it because somebody's cross-dressing. They assume you hate it because you hate the gays. They never take a moment to think like, there are people out there who don't hate gays and don't hate transgender people and actually think gays should get married and think that, adults that are transgender should be able to get any sex changes they want, and they just don't really agree with the kids, and they feel uncomfortable about the sports. And the drag shows thing makes them feel uncomfortable because they know it's a sexual performance. They feel uncomfortable with it taking place. And so, of course, one of the themes is you're a bigot, you're hateful, everything else. Now, what's funny is so many of them knew so many details about my story that it reminds me of the Jack Sparrow meme where they say, you're the worst pirate I've ever heard of. And he's like, but you have heard of me. And so it's funny when they say, you're the biggest bigot in Kentucky. You're such bigoted. Everything else. Oh, Andrew, he's such a bigoted person. It's like, well, it's funny that you know exactly who I am in my story, though. That tells me that there's an impact going on. Because you don't become public enemy number 1 unless you're actually doing something that they view as adversarial to their position. If you're not doing anything adversarial, if you're not doing anything that would set them back in their goals, well, they wouldn't bother caring about who you are. And so when you find yourself being attacked, if you stand up for things, and you find yourself being attacked, take a moment to recognize that means you are making a difference of some sort. Because it's only worth their energy to do it if they feel like you're a threat. And they have good reason to feel like it's a threat, because this goes into the other theme. They claimed that this is in no way, shape, or form a taxpayer-funded event. No way, shape, or form. But that is factually inaccurate. The very fact that this drag performance took place on a state-owned property at a state-owned university, a university that's funded to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars from your pockets, means taxpayer funds help put on the performance. They want to say that it's put on by some student organization at BCTC. Well, the problem with that claim, 1, a student organization does take place, is taxpayer funded. Whether you like it or not, it's taxpayer funded. Factually speaking, it's taxpayer funded. Once again, it is funded by the taxpayers, but also where you're having the performance at is taxpayer funded. Now, did you pay a fee in order to put on the performance? Did you pay money to the university for using the parking lot? And then on top of that, could somebody like a church that wants to hold church service, speaking against those kinds of things, be able to rent that same parking lot for the same rate and be able to espouse their viewpoints? The answer is no. And if the answer is you didn't pay for it, which in this case, I do believe they did not pay for it, then it's quite clearly taxpayer funded, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But of course, they want to play dumb and play stupid. It's the same thing. They want to say, in the post, we talked about how there's children present. In the photo, it's not super obvious there's kids there. Because, of course, your average person, especially person on our side of things, doesn't go around taking photos of kids. That's not a normal thing. They don't do that. They snap a picture real quick to say, oh my gosh, they're like, there's kids here. And based on where that photo came from, I know for a fact there were kids under 18 viewing that performance. I know for a fact. But to them, it doesn't matter. See, they want to argue about whether or not kids were there. But let's say we could show, beyond a shadow of doubt, there's kids there. Because we know, we've shown photos of kids putting dollar bills in drag performers' lingerie. that are pop locking, drag performers pop locking and dropping it right next to kids. It's happened here in Kentucky. We've shown it before. And it doesn't matter. They don't care. It's not as if I was like, hey, what if we showed you photographic evidence of a kid at that drag performance? Would you agree with it or not? Or they suddenly gonna be like, yeah, I would have a problem with it. I'd fight that with you. Okay, great. Let's try to pass a law then saying kids can't be there and be within distance. A law we tried to pass last session and a law they all protested against. So I say all that to say this. Don't be perturbed. Don't feel pushed back. You know, if you're out there speaking your mind and these people try to mob you, don't feel intimidated. One, it doesn't matter. They have nothing else to do. I've literally never taken part in a mobbing of anybody that I disagree with online or in person, but online. I've never once been like, yeah, I'm going to go mob this person specifically. I've been a part of mobbing, the legislature over bills and telling them not to pass it. But a private citizen putting out their viewpoint, never been a part of mobbing because it's not, I don't need to shame them. And also it makes you look bad because you got to think, we make these posts not to convince them. We do these things in order to convince those who are silent watching to know that one, people agree with them, but then two, when they look in the comment sections and they see some of the things they're saying, it makes people be like, oh, these people are crazy. And it gets that point across. I think that's important to mention. And then finally, Daniel Grossberg. For those of you who don't remember, Daniel Grossberg is a state house rep out of Louisville, has come under fire due to alleged inappropriate text messages with lobbyists and activists that he interacts with up there. He's so far, as the count has been, we found out that when he went to college in Grinnell, Iowa, he used to write a humorous sketch column where he gave creepy sexual advice to writers, people who sent in questions that he made up. So he made up the questions and then he wrote the advice back. So we found out he did that. We find out that he's apparently, the Young Democrats came out saying, yeah, there's people that have had inappropriate interactions with him as well. So we're calling on him to step down. We find out the House caucus has kicked him out. And we find out that, the hits keep coming. And his lawyer has come out and said that, well, he isn't able to handle this because he's autistic. He's neurodivergent. And that's why he's sexually inappropriate. Which now has caused the leftists that stand up for neurodivergent people to disown him for saying that. Because they're like, no. You don't get to excuse your sexually inappropriate behavior over somebody over you supposedly being autistic. That makes autistic people look bad. That's their take on it. And now we have Governor Beshear saying, hey, he should probably step down. And so that's Daniel Grossberg, I don't think makes it to next session. And if he does, golly, it's certainly a mark on everybody. I think Daniel Grossberg is going to end up having to resign, I believe. It's going to be hard for him to come back from this unless he hopes he can last 2 years in that position or a year and a half till the next primary and be able to hold on and nobody kicks him out in a year and a half. Because your question at this point is, do you want to resign? Or do you want to lose the primary? Do you want to be basically cast to the side, constantly, pooed upon for your behavior? Or what do you want to do here? So he'll probably end up stepping down. Remember, for those of you who listen to the show, Chester Burton, Louisville Democrat, she just got charged with another DUI, pulling out the, do you know who I am card. We haven't seen the body cam footage from that yet, but I'm sure it's pretty bad. So that's going to possibly lead to somebody who has to resign. And now, also, we have, for those of you who don't remember, we got Tina, the House Rep out of Louisville, Bojanowski, I believe is how you say her name. Anyways, she is facing getting kicked off the ballot because or she did get kicked off the ballot, and it's unclear if she's going to be able to run for her seat again because she misfilled out her paperwork. So the 20 House Democrats, 3 of them, all from Louisville, coincidence, but 3 of them right now are potentially not going to be there come January because of their own behaviors. What does that say about Democrats in this state? They're, as Trump says, they're not sending us their brightest. That's certainly true. Well, y'all, that's what we got time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. I thank you all so much for joining me. We'll be back here on Monday. I hope you have a great rest of your day.